Hello everyone! In today's video I'm going to talk about paraphrasing. But before I start explaining what paraphrasing is, let me tell you what is not paraphrasing. Well, it's not simply replacing a couple words with its synonyms. It's more than that. You have to make sure that you don't use the exact same wording that is in the original text. And to do this, you should remain faithful to the author's ideas in the paraphrased text. It requires a lot of practice, and today we will work on that with some example sentences. I'm gonna teach you the ways to write accurate paraphrased sentences. Let's get started. The most important part of paraphrasing is to understand the source text well enough to be able to rewrite it with the same meaning. Then you can use synonyms, or you can change the order of the words or grammar structures. Here are some of the paraphrasing techniques that we're going to look at. The first thing I noticed here is that the writer starts the paragraph with a different grammar structure. The original sentence starts with a passive structure. It was thought that, and the writer changed it into an active sentence in the paraphrase text. People thought that. As you all know, another way to paraphrase is to use synonym words. As you see here, necessitate and require are synonyms of each other in this context. But you should be careful. If you want to use a lot of synonyms when you paraphrase, you need to make sure that the new word has exactly the same meaning as the original word, because sometimes there is a little bit of a difference in meaning. Finally, in the original paragraph, the writer says, attitudes and ideas have changed. So change is in the verb form here, but in the paraphrased version, the writer uses the noun form of change and says, with recent changes in attitudes and ideas. So when you paraphrase, you can change the sentence structures by using different forms of certain words. Now let's look at our second example. Even with our extraordinary capacity for innovation and adaptability, we probably won't be among the survivors of climate change. Here, the adjective extraordinary comes before the noun. However, in the paraphrase text, the position of this adjective is different. It is at the end of the sentence. So, the writer changes the order of the words to paraphrase. Let's continue. This is partly because humans reproduce agonizingly slowly and generally just one or two at a time. Here, we can change the subject humans into a subject pronoun we, and instead of using reproduce, the synonym of this word breed can be used. In the original text, agonizingly means extremely, but it is used to emphasize something negative. In the paraphrase text, another adverb, to, was used to give the same meaning. The writer changes the order of the sentences as well. In the original text, the result is presented first and the reason is given later. However, in the paraphrase text, the writer introduces the reason earlier and offers the result at the end of the paragraph by using therefore. In the third example, we see that the paraphrased version starts with adverbial phrase of place in inward-looking societies. So the rest must be in complete sentence telling what the situation is in such societies. The information in the original text tells us that people in these societies don't have a comparative outlook on social or political issues, and in the paraphrase text, the writer uses lack of instead of don't have. Because as you know, lack of means the state of not having something or not having enough of something. But notice that the writer uses lack as a noun, not as a verb. When we move on, in the paraphrase text, we see consequently, but in the original version, we see therefore instead. These two terms are often used synonymously. In that sentence, the writer uses societies as the subject and says how they become ethnocentric with radical changes by using the verb favor. Finally, the writer changes in other words to that is to say because they have the same function. In this sentence, the writer uses different parts of speech to paraphrase the original. For example, he changes the nouns into adjectives as in these examples. For instance, inclination toward becomes be inclined to, xenophobia becomes xenophobic, and tolerance for becomes tolerant of. The writer also makes use of comparatives to paraphrase the verbs intensify with more and lose with less. The next item in the most general sense explains why a certain drug is chosen for clinical trials with the adverbial because. So the result comes first and the reason comes next in the sentence starting with because. If you look at the paraphrased version, however, the writer changes this order. First the reason is given and in the very last sentence, with the transition phrase, that's why, the result is presented. While giving information about the drug, the writer swaps the position of relative clause and the main clause. In the original text, the non-defining relative clause, which is used to give extra information between the commas after the name of the drug, is used as the main clause in the paraphrased form. The verb designed is changed into synthesized in the process, but the purpose toward of Alzheimer's stays the same in both versions. In addition, the writer gives the difference between this drug and the others with unlike in the original, but paraphrases it with the verb differ from and says it differs from other drugs in that it doesn't seem to cause edema in the blood vessels. Then uses a non-defining relative clause to give extra information at the end of the text. In number 5, the writer paraphrases what Jean-Jacques Rousseau's philosophy deals with and what it doesn't deal with by changing the order. While doing that, the writer changes the verbs and the transitions. He/she uses focus on instead of be concerned with, but rather in the place of instead of, and giving instead of imparting. In the original text, the writer says this philosophy is concerned with particular techniques, but in the paraphrase text, instead of saying with particular techniques, another preposition through is used. So students learn concepts through these techniques. The purpose is expressed by using so that in the original text, but in the paraphrase text, it is expressed with the sentence starting with the purpose is to help the student. The purpose is to do something. And here the adjectives virtuous, unnatural, and imperfect are turned into ethical or honest, artificial, and flawed. In the last example, the first sentence is paraphrased via nominalization. As you all know, nominalization is changing a full sentence into a noun phrase. Here, it is done by changing the verb attempt into a noun. Notice, after the first sentence is nominalized, the non-defining clause after the comma in the original text is presented as the main clause in the paraphrase text, with the verb brought about instead of resulted in. In addition, the word turmoil replaced by chaos in the same sentence. Then, the adverbial clause of reason starting with as is turned into a time adverbial phrase that starts with after, with a change in part of speech from execute to execution. At the end of the first version of the text, the sentence with the adverbial although is divided into two separate sentences and joined by nevertheless to keep the same meaning in the paraphrased text. Meanwhile, the writer uses different part of speech and synonyms to convey the same meaning, and the negation don't believe in the original paragraph is given with the adjective wrong in the paraphrased one. So that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the lesson. Bye for now.